So it all started with their fathers, Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. They put it all on a line. They captivated the public. They put on a spectacle, and both warriors were loved sincerely. Two fighters, one win for Eubank and one very controversial draw. But this grew the seeds for a new amazing rivalry, as their sons are now the warriors going to battle, going to war and bearing their souls. But how did we get here? Well, when Conor had a boxing transformation, the match became possible. Chris Eubank Jr. is seasoned. He had his ups and he had his downs. But when it was first scheduled, when the fight was first scheduled, the promotion and the marketing was sensational. Chris Jr. told us about his abstinence cycles and parliamentary procedures, and Conor was just ferocious. The fans desperately wanted to see this spectacle. But a week before the fight, it was cancelled. A failed test had stopped a huge contest. This, of course, added further controversy. Conor would enter a dark phase, but he rebounded. And surprise, surprise, the face was rescheduled. An egg slap in a press conference cemented the public's desire. This was serious. This was personal. And both gladiators, both warriors, were defending their father's legacies. The rehydration created another interesting element. And Chris, being boxing's best orator, he kept us all entertained. Chris Jr. then reunited with his father for possibly the greatest boxing ring walk of all time. This was seriously a legendary moment. And perhaps surprisingly, or perhaps not, the fight was amazing. The fight was sensational. Chris Jr. initially used jab, feints, movement, and left-hand counters effectively. But eventually he got drawn into a war. Both men gave their souls in the ring, and this set the pace for a scintillating rematch. Boxing is a science and a brutal business. Yes, boxing is a science and a brutal business. The objective truth is that you can get hurt really bad. It takes a special type of personality to thrive in this brutal business. It takes aggression, it takes strategy, it takes stoicism, and much more. This fight was not for an official world title, but it was for integrity, it was for passion, and it was for legacy. This fight generated maybe the world's strongest currency, and that currency is purpose. Chris Eubank Jr. came into the scene swinging. He built a 17-0 record. His style was athletic but explosive, extremely explosive. He gained media attention for his, perceived arrogance. This confidence echoed his father's bravado. He had elaborate wing walks, post-fight interviews, and a verbal dexterity that the media loved. Networks initially saw him as the next star. Chris Eubank Jr.'s first step up was against Billy Joe Saunders. Both warriors did amazing promo, and the fight was very competitive. But Billy Joe Saunders ultimately took a decision. In hindsight, perhaps this was poor matchmaking. Billy Joe Saunders, a southpaw, has great movement, good counter-punching, and a good boxing brain. Chris came on strong later in the fight, but Billy Joe Saunders won enough of the early rounds to win the fight. This is something to remember. Boxing is unforgiving, and when you lose, criticism can become overwhelming. This prompted the changes in trainers. First, there was the temporary link-up with Adam Booth. Then there was the temporary link-up with Nate Vasquez. And then there was the link-up with the legend, the absolute legend Roy Jones. Then there was the successful link-up with Jonathan Banks. But now, Chris has switched back to Bomac. Chris was clearly suffering. He was suffering from a lack of consistency in trainers. And he had some good victories. The one that stood out was against James DeGale. That night, he was patient and absolutely ferocious. When Chris was scheduled to fight Groves, the build-up was very entertaining. Chris looked extremely confident. He really did look confident. And it was a grueling fight, and it was a brutal fight. But Groves' extra power and boxing intelligence at the time, it gave him that edge. After that fight, inevitably came the rebuilding process. A loss to Liam Smith was avenged, and that set the stage. At this point, Chris went from athletic, aggressive fighter to adopting a more cerebral approach. He had evolved his boxing technique to cope in the boxing jungle. So Conor had a very short amateur career. It was very short, only 20 fights. Conor was always aggressive, with heart and lots of determination. But in 2019 to 2020, under the guidance of Tony Sims, Conor focused on developing his boxing IQ. And fans, they loved the aggression. In a simple sense, Conor was ferocious, and the Chris Algieri fight was a step up in competition. It was a step up, but Conor passed the test in flying colours, getting knockout of the year. Conor developed his aggression with boxing IQ. After disposing of Chris Van Heerden, apologies if the pronunciation isn't great there, he was seen as one of Britain's most exciting fighters. Conor was developing his own boxing identity because Conor, he had power, speed, and ferocious punching. He was just generally ferocious. But on top of this, he developed his balance, he developed his patience, and he developed his positioning. The overhand right and the left hooks, they were scary. They were vicious. Conor, in a simple sense, evolved. He evolved his technique. He complemented his aggression with boxing IQ, and he was fearless. So with regards to a Chris Eubank Jr., I think he has three options. Let's explore this accordingly. Option 1, he uses his feet to minimize his Conor's punch opportunities. Additional to this, he throws over 30 jabs a round. He uses the feint to keep Conor's body twitching, which will exert energy. Off the feint, he should use the short left hook, replicating the double jab, feint right, left hook, as it worked effectively the first time, and use the counter punching, but stay out of the pocket when you have finished with your punch combination. Now here's option 2. This is a riskier strategy, but you take the center of the ring and you use the double jab primarily to set up the backhand. On the inside, use the hook to the body and those ferocious uppercuts. Step to the right on the inside and on the outside to create a better punching angle. Use the clinch to nullify Conor's punches, but also to drain his stamina. If Conor punches through the phases, respond immediately. Why? Because this will take away his confidence and momentum. So that's option 2, and here's option 3. Use option 1 for the first 6 rounds, then advance to option 2 in the second half of the fight. Now option 1 is a safer victory because it presents less punching opportunities for Conor. Option 2 is riskier, but increases the chance for a knockout. However, it also makes Chris Jr. more susceptible to being knocked out. Conor should invest in the body, but he should do this intelligently. For example, the right uppercut to the head and the left hook to the body. In this sequence, the right uppercut is a distraction from the powerful left hook body shot. Counter jabs, jab off the feint, and jabbing after dipping to the left. The more jabs Conor throws, the more opportunities are presented for the backhand. I feel like Conor should set up the overhand right with the feint. With correct distance, speed and power, there may be something there. If Chris telegraphs the left hook, it can be countered. The variation of the straight right to the body off the feint could be a smart investment. If you alter the trajectory of the straight right to the body to the head, later in the fight you increases the chances of landing that punch. Maintaining effective head movement would be good because missed punches will affect Chris's endurance and stamina. Punch in phases, for example, straight right, left hook, right uppercut, left hook to the body, etc. Punching in phases can steal rounds. This may be important in a close fight if it goes the distance. The jab to the chest could be a good investment here. If Chris is not 100%, that punch could speed up the deterioration process. Depending on the approach, this fight could develop in several different ways. This is a hard fight for both men. This will not be a walk in the park. Both will show courage and will likely go to some dark places. In dark places, we find out who we are. Boxing, in its toughest moments, can reveal some brutal truths.